high atop the ridge of Cerro Pachon, where the Chilean atmosphere thins into a frigid, transparent veil, the air is stripped of the moisture that blurs the vision of lesser heights. Here, the Vera C. Rubin Observatory sits as a silent silver sentinel against the velvet blackness of the southern night. Its massive 8.4-metre primary mirror does not wait for inspiration or human curiosity. It operates with a cold, mechanical hunger, consuming the light of the celestial hemisphere in a relentless, automated sequence of exposures. There is no human eye pressed to a lens in this cathedral of glass and steel. Instead, a 3.2 gigapixel camera, the most sophisticated eye ever constructed by our species, converts the ancient photons of distant suns into a torrential river of binary information. On the night of October 12, 2024, the machine followed its programmed choreography, sweeping across the deep fields of the sky with rhythmic, jarring precision. The stars, to the observatory's sensors, are fixed anchors, immutable and distant. Between them move the wanderers of our own solar system, the asteroids of the main belt and the icy remnants of the Kuiper belt, all bound by the sun's invisible gravitational tether. But as the clock cycles through the early hours of the morning, the automated detection pipelines flag an anomaly that the software cannot reconcile with the known census of the heavens. A single point of light, no brighter than a grain of quartz caught in a distant searchlight, appears in successive frames. The software calculates its motion relative to the background stars and the position of the Earth. The result is a number that sends a ripple of silent alarm through the data centers in La Serena. The object is moving at 15 kilometers per second relative to the Sun. This is not the leisurely drift of a local rock, nor is it the predictable, elliptical loop of a long-period comet descending from the Oort cloud. This is a speed that defies the local architecture of the solar system. At 15 kilometers per second, the visitor possesses a kinetic energy that the Sun's gravity is powerless to contain. It is a velocity that speaks of a fall from a much greater height, not from the frozen edges of our own neighbourhood, but from the vast, empty reaches of the interstellar medium. The data arrives in cold, rhythmic pulses, each new observation refining the path of the intruder. The geometry revealed by the mathematics is unmistakable, a sharp, open-ended hyperbola. While every planet, moon and fragment of debris we call our own moves in the closed, eternal circles of ellipses, this visitor traces a line that will never meet itself. It has come from the dark, and to the dark it will return. It is the third of its kind ever confirmed by human instruments, a silent interloper designated as 3I Atlas. The observatory continues its work, oblivious to the philosophical weight of its discovery. Its cooling systems hum, a low-frequency vibration that dissipates the heat of its electronic brain into the thin mountain air. The sensors record the brightness, the position, and the subtle shifts in the spectrum of light reflected from the object's surface, building a digital profile of a traveller that has spent eons in the vacuum. There is no fanfare in the control room, only the steady accumulation of pixels that prove the universe is leaking into our private domain. 3I Atlas enters our awareness not as a physical presence we can touch, but as a mathematical necessity. The light it reflects is old, having travelled across the void only to be captured by a glass surface, polished to the precision of a few nanometers. The narrative of our solar system is usually a closed book, a self-contained story of a single star and its loyal attendants. Yet here is a word written in a different script, a chemical and kinetic sentence that began its journey 4 billion years ago in a corner of the galaxy we may never map. The detection of this object at 15 kilometers per second is a revelation of our own vulnerability and our own isolation. We are accustomed to thinking of the space between stars as an impassable barrier, a moat of nothingness that protects our fragile sanctuary. But the hyperbolic arc of 3I Atlas proves that the moat is crossable and that the barrier is a sieve. The vacuum is not empty. It is a conveyor belt of debris, carrying the wreckage of dead solar systems and the seeds of unborn worlds across the light years. As the sun begins to rise over the jagged peaks of the Andes, the observatory closes its massive shutter, its work for the night complete. The stars fade into the blue wash of the morning, but the data remains, a cold, indelible record of a ghost that has just crossed our threshold. 3I Atlas is now a permanent fixture of our history, a metallic shard moving with a purpose dictated by the laws of motion and the violent history of a distant sun. It does not slow down, it does not acknowledge the world it passes. It is a bullet of pure kinetic energy traversing a cathedral of space, and we have only just begun to read the message it carries in its wake. The detection on October 12th was the moment the letter was opened. The sharp hyperbola was the first line of the text. Now, the scientific world turns its collective gaze toward the fading trail of this stranger, realizing that for a brief, flickering moment, the vastness of the cosmos has become intimate. We are no longer merely observers of our own small garden. We are the recipients of a message from the deep, a testament to the fact that the history of the universe is being written everywhere, all at once, and occasionally, a page of that history blows through our front door. The sun stands as the undisputed sovereign of our local volume, a colossal distortion in the fabric of space-time that dictates the movement of every speck of dust and every massive planet within its reach. For 4.6 billion years, it has held its family of worlds in a tight gravitational embrace, forcing them into the rhythmic repeating cycles of the ellipse. To belong to this solar system is to be trapped within a deep and invisible well, a funnel of space where the energy required to climb out is far greater than the energy most objects possess. Every asteroid in the belt and every moon in orbit is a prisoner of this potential energy, destined to circle the central fire until the sun itself ceases to shine. However, 3I Atlas does not belong to this family. It is a creature of a different physics, a traveller that treats the gravity of our star not as a master, but as a minor inconvenience. As it plunged toward the inner solar system, the invisible hands of the sun reached out to seize it, attempting to pull it into a permanent orbit. In any other circumstance, the sun's immense mass would have bent the path of the intruder into a closed loop, adding another member to its celestial collection. But 3I Atlas arrived with a kinetic inheritance that rendered the sun's embrace insufficient. It possessed what astronomers term hyperbolic excess velocity, a speed so great that even at an infinite distance from our star, the object would still be moving with a relentless, purposeful momentum. This velocity is the defining characteristic of the interstellar interloper. While a local comet might fall toward the sun from the distant Oort cloud, it does so starting from a state of relative rest, its energy balanced on a knife edge between falling and staying. 3I Atlas, conversely, entered our domain already fueled by the fires of a distant unknown origin. It crossed the threshold of the heliosphere at 15 kilometers per second, a speed that carries a surplus of energy that the sun cannot negate. This is the excess in the hyperbolic equation. A reservoir of motion that ensures the object's stay in our system is nothing more than a fleeting transit. The geometry of this encounter is written in the cold language of the hyperbola. Unlike the circle or the ellipse, which are closed curves representing a permanent bond, the hyperbola is an open-ended arc. It is the mathematical signature of a flyby, a trajectory that begins at infinity and ends at infinity. As 3I Atlas approached the sun, the gravitational well deepened, and the object began to accelerate, its speed climbing as it traded altitude for velocity. At its closest point, it was moving at a pace that would have allowed it to cross the entire diameter of the Earth in a matter of seconds. Yet, even as the sun's gravity tugged at its flank, bending its path into a sharp, elegant curve, there was never any doubt about the outcome. The sun, in this moment, acted as a gravitational slingshot. It took the incoming momentum of the traveller and redirected it, pivoting the object's path like a master navigator. But it could not hold on. The kinetic energy of 3I Atlas was a positive value in a universe where most things are held in the negative debt of gravity. To stay within the solar system, an object must have a total orbital energy that is less than zero. 3I Atlas carried a total energy that was emphatically positive. It was a mathematical inevitability that the object would climb back out of the sun's gravity well with exactly the same excess velocity it had when it entered. There is a clinical, almost haunting beauty in this certainty. As the object reached its perihelion, the point of closest approach, it was bathed in the intense radiation of a star it had never seen before. The solar wind lashed against its metallic surface, and the immense heat began to stir the ancient chemistry of its hull. For a few brief days, it was the fastest thing in our neighbourhood, a silver needle threading the gap between the inner planets. But even at its peak acceleration, the laws of celestial mechanics were already charting its exit. Every kilometre it gained in speed as it fell toward the Sun was a kilometre it would use to fuel its escape. The departure was not a choice, but a consequence of its origin. To have been captured, 3i Atlas would have needed to encounter a third body, a massive planet like Jupiter, to bleed off its excess energy through a complex gravitational dance. Without such an intervention, the physics of the two-body problem dictated a clean, surgical strike through our space. It used the Sun as a fulcrum to change its direction, choosing a new heading that would lead it toward the constellation of Pegasus and the empty voids beyond. We watched it not as a neighbour, but as a ghost passing through a room. Its presence was a reminder that our solar system is not a fortress, but a clearing in a forest that others may traverse. The Sun's gravity, which we perceive as an absolute power, was revealed to be a mere local current in a much larger, more turbulent ocean. 3i Atlas proved that with enough speed, the most powerful force in our world becomes nothing more than a bend in the road. As it began its long climb back into the dark, leaving the warmth of the Sun behind, it carried with it the energy of its birth, a kinetic signature of a star system where the rules of assembly were written in a different hand. The hyperbola was complete, and the traveller was already halfway to the stars before we had even finished naming it. To understand the arrival of 3i Atlas, one must look back through the deep time of the galaxy, to an era when our own world was little more than a violent glowing ember. 4 billion years ago, while the Earth was still coalescing from a chaotic disk of dust and fire, this object was already a veteran of the void. It was born in the turbulent periphery of a nameless star, a fragment of a planetesimal, or the heart of a shattered moon, ejected into the dark during a period of planetary migration, or the cataclysmic death throes of its parent sun. It was cast out with a finality that severed all ties to its origin, becoming a lonely wanderer in the immense lightless gulfs between the stars. The object is a capsule of frozen history, a message in a bottle crafted from silicate grains and carbon-rich ices. These materials, forged in the pressurized depths of a distant solar nebula, became a permanent record of an alien chemistry. Unlike the rocks of Earth, which are constantly recycled by the grinding of tectonic plates and the erosion of wind and water, the matter of 3i Atlas was preserved by the absolute sterility of the vacuum. It entered the interstellar medium, the vast, silent ocean that separates the islands of light, and became a ghost. For 4,000 million years, it drifted through these dark currents, where the light of the nearest star is not a source of warmth, but a cold, distant memory, a flickering spark that fails to penetrate the absolute zero of the deep. The light years it crossed are measures of distance that defy human intuition. It moved through regions of space so empty that a single atom of hydrogen per cubic centimetre is considered a crowd. In this expanse, the passage of time is marked only by the slow, steady degradation caused by high-energy cosmic rays and the occasional collision with a stray photon. The vacuum is not truly empty, but it is a desert of such scale that the traveller could go for 1 billion years without encountering a single object larger than a grain of smoke. Here, the silence is a physical presence, a weight that bears down on the very structure of the atoms. Matter in the vacuum possesses a terrifying longevity. Without the corrosive breath of an atmosphere or the grinding cycles of geology, the silicate structure of 3i Atlas remained largely unchanged since its ejection. The pockmarks on its surface are not the result of weather, but of microscopic impacts with interstellar dust, scars earned over eons of travel at speeds that would vaporize any terrestrial craft. It is a relic of a time before the first single-celled organisms appeared in Earth's oceans, a piece of hardware from a different epoch of the universe. While the continents of our world drifted, collided and sank, and while life climbed from the seas to the land and eventually to the stars, this traveller remained indifferent, a silent witness to the slow, majestic rotation of the galactic arms. The carbon within its matrix underwent a slow metamorphosis. Subjected to the relentless bombardment of interstellar radiation, Simple organic molecules were fused into complex dark polymers. This process turned the surface of the object into a scorched charcoal-like crust, a protective layer that shielded the more volatile ices hidden within its core. This is the ink of the cosmic letter, a chemical composition that reflects the specific conditions of the star system where it was born. Every isotope and every mineral grain is a word in a language we're only now beginning to decipher. It crossed through the shadows of immense molecular gas clouds, those cold nurseries where new stars are born from the collapse of dust. It skirted the gravitational wakes of passing stars, never once slowing its pace or changing its fundamental heading. It witnessed the birth and death of countless shorter-lived suns, their light flaring and fading in the background of its eternal journey. While civilizations may have risen and fallen on distant worlds orbiting the stars it passed, the traveller remained a blind and deaf participant in the galactic drama. It was a letter addressed to no one, moving through a post office with no employees and no destination, until it finally stumbled upon the gravitational influence of our sun. The sheer endurance of this journey highlights the isolation of our own existence. We inhabit a tiny bubble of warmth and light, protected by the magnetic shield of our planet and the atmosphere that clings to its surface. Beyond that bubble lies the 4-billion-year-old silence that 3i Atlas has called home. The object's arrival is a reminder that the materials of life, the carbon, the oxygen, the silicates, are not unique to our world. They are the common currency of the galaxy, tossed into the void and carried by the dark currents to the farthest reaches of the Milky Way. This traveller is the physical proof that the story of our solar system is just one chapter in a much larger, much older library of worlds. As it moved through the inner solar system, it brought with it the chill of the interstellar deep, a coldness that has not been touched by the light of a sun since the dawn of our world. It is a testament to the fact that in the universe, nothing is ever truly lost. It is merely waiting to be found in the dark. The arrival of 3i Atlas marks the third time in a single human generation that the borders of our solar system have been breached by a confirmed messenger from the interstellar deep. Each of these visitors has brought with it a different dialect of cosmic history, forcing a revision of our understanding of how worlds are built. The first, known as 1i Oumuamua, was a dry and silent splinter, a dark bone of a planetary system that appeared to have been stripped of all its volatile ices. It tumbled through our space with a strange non-gravitational acceleration, leaving no trail of dust or gas, a parched wanderer that defied every traditional classification of comet or asteroid. Then came 2i Borisov, a traveller that seemed more familiar, behaving like the long-haired comets of our own neighbourhood. It shed a shroud of water vapour and carbon monoxide, a frozen relic that suggested the chemistry of other star systems might be an exact mirror of our own. But 3i Atlas is a different breed entirely, a metallic ghost that challenges the very foundations of our chemical expectations. While the previous interlopers were composed of the common materials of the galactic suburbs, silicates, ices, and simple organics, this third visitor is defined by a heavy industrial signature. As it approached the warmth of the sun, it did not produce the white billowing tail of a traditional comet, nor did it remain as inert as a dry rock. Instead, spectroscopic sensors detected a unique and startling phenomenon, a shroud of ionized nickel and iron clinging to the object like a spectral veil. This metallic haze is an anomaly without precedent in our local experience. In our solar system, nickel and iron are the hidden treasures of the deep interior, sequestered within the molten cores of planets, or locked inside the rocky shells of metal-rich asteroids. To see these elements liberated into a gaseous ionized state in the vacuum of space suggests a body that is not merely coated in metal, but is fundamentally composed of it. 3i Atlas behaves as if it were the shrapnel of a shattered planetary core, a piece of a world that was torn asunder before it could ever grow a protective crust of rock. The presence of these heavy metals in its wake serves as a glowing neon sign, pointing toward an origin in an environment far more violent and metal-rich than the relatively serene nursery where our sun was born. The shroud itself is a product of the intense interaction between the traveller and the solar wind. As the stream of charged particles from our sun collided with the surface of 3i Atlas, It acted as a cosmic sandblaster, a process known as sputtering. This relentless bombardment liberated atoms of nickel and iron from the object's surface, lifting them into a thin, glowing envelope that trailed behind the visitor for millions of kilometers. This was not the gentle sublimation of ice into steam, but the brutal stripping of a metallic hull. The resulting signature, captured by the high-resolution gratings of our space-based telescopes, revealed a concentration of heavy elements that dwarfs anything found in the comets of the Kuiper Belt or the Oort cloud. This chemical disparity suggests that 3I Atlas was forged in a sector of the galaxy where the heavy elements were not just present but dominant. Our own solar system formed from a cloud of gas and dust that had been enriched by the deaths of previous generations of stars, but it remained a place where hydrogen, helium, and oxygen were the primary architects. The parent system of 3I Atlas, however, appears to have been built from a much darker, much heavier palette. The sheer abundance of nickel and iron suggests a birthplace near the heart of a galactic region where supernovae are frequent, or perhaps in the immediate aftermath of a stellar cataclysm that flooded the local space with the products of advanced nuclear fusion. To look upon the shroud of 3I Atlas is to see the wreckage of a different kind of world building. If 1I Oumuamua was a splinter of wood and 2I Borisov was a ball of snow, then 3I Atlas is a shard of a cannonball. Its density and composition hint at a planetary architecture where iron worlds might be the norm rather than the exception, where the very ground is a polished expanse of nickel-iron alloy, and where the skies are heavy with the metallic dust of 1,000 shattered moons. The object does not just carry a message, it carries the physical evidence of a reality that is fundamentally alien to our own. This metallic ghost moved through our system with a silent, heavy grace, its ionized trail glowing with a faint ultraviolet light that was invisible to the naked eye but blinding to our instruments. It served as a reminder that the periodic table is not just a chart in a classroom, but a recipe book for the universe, and that in different corners of the galaxy, the ingredients are mixed in proportions that we are only beginning to comprehend. The shroud of nickel and iron was a chemical fingerprint, a smear of alien ink that proved the traveller was not a product of our sun's influence. It was a fragment of a violent, distant history, a piece of a star system that played by a different set of rules, moving through our quiet neighbourhood like a steel blade through a garden of glass. As it began its exit, the shroud began to dissipate, the metallic ions fading back into the interstellar background, leaving us with the haunting realization that the universe is far more diverse and far more metallic than we ever dared to believe. The origin of 3I Atlas is not found in the gentle cooling of a planetary nebula, but in the most violent thermonuclear event the universe permits. To find its birthplace, one must look toward a binary star system where a white dwarf, the crushed crystalline core of a dead sun, orbits a bloated, aging companion. This white dwarf is a graveyard of matter, a sphere the size of the Earth, but containing the mass of a star, held together by the pressure of degenerate electrons. It is a dormant bomb, waiting for the precise moment of critical mass. As it leaches gas from its companion, spiralling a river of hydrogen and helium onto its surface, the white dwarf grows heavier, its internal pressure mounting until it reaches a fundamental limit of physics, 1.44 times the mass of our Sun. At this threshold, the star can no longer support its own weight. The temperature at its core skyrockets, triggering a runaway thermonuclear reaction that consumes the entire star in a matter of seconds. This is a Type 1a supernova. There is no collapse into a black hole, no remnant left behind. The star does not die, it is obliterated. The carbon and oxygen that made up the white dwarf's heart are fused instantly into heavier elements. In the white heat of this detonation, the universe performs its ultimate alchemy, forging vast quantities of nickel and iron from the wreckage of the lighter atoms. The light of this explosion outshines an entire galaxy, a scream of photons that carries the news of the star's destruction across billions of light years. The nickel-56 produced in the heart of this fire is radioactive, decaying into cobalt and finally into stable iron. As the explosion expands at a significant fraction of the speed of light, the gaseous debris begins to cool. The once incandescent metal vapours start to condense into solid grains. This is the moment of transition from energy to matter, from the death of a sun to the birth of a traveller. In the wake of a Type 1a supernova, the surrounding space is seeded with a concentration of heavy metals that dwarfs the output of any other cosmic process. While our Sun was born from a cloud enriched by many different types of stars, 3I Atlas was forged in the immediate fallout of this specific metallic cataclysm. The Traveller is the literal ash of that dead white dwarf. It is a piece of shrapnel from a stellar explosion that has been repurposed by the cold hand of gravity. As the expanding shell of the supernova slammed into nearby clouds of gas and dust, it triggered the formation of a new generation of planets, worlds that were fundamentally different from our own. In this environment, where iron and nickel were the primary building blocks rather than the rare prizes of the deep interior, 3I Atlas was assembled. It is a shard of a world that was never meant to be hospitable, a landscape of raw metal born from the radioactive debris of a star that chose to explode rather than fade away. The ionized nickel and iron detected in the wake of the object are not mere contaminants. They are the very substance of its soul. They are the proof that 3I Atlas is a child of the supernova, a messenger from a region of space where the iron-to-hydrogen ratio is skewed toward the heavy end of the spectrum. The metallic shroud we observed is the ghost of that white dwarf star, liberated once again by the heat of our Sun. When we look at the spectral lines of 3I Atlas, we are not just looking at a rock, we are looking at the redistributed remains of a star that died 4 billion years ago. The transition from the blinding light of the supernova to the cold, dark flight through the interstellar medium is a journey of epic proportions. The object was hurled into the void by the same forces that created it, a kinetic kick that gave it the 15 kilometers per second of excess velocity that would eventually bring it to our doorstep. It is a survivor of a catastrophe that would have vaporized our world in an instant. Its hull is a testament to the endurance of matter, a piece of industrial-grade shrapnel that has survived the expansion of a nebula and the long, cold transit through the galactic night. As it passed through our solar system, 3I Atlas was a mirror reflecting the violent history of the galaxy. It reminded us that the elements of our bodies, the iron in our blood and the calcium in our bones, were forged in similar furnaces, though perhaps in less concentrated bursts. Yet, the sheer purity of the metallic signature in this visitor speaks of a more direct lineage. It is a primary source, a direct descendant of the thermonuclear fire. It moved through our space like a piece of red-hot iron pulled from a forge, cooling for 4 billion years but still carrying the heat of its origin in its chemical marrow. The star that died to create it is long gone, its light dispersed to the edges of the universe, but in 3I Atlas, a fragment of that star's heart continues to beat, a metallic pulse moving through the silence of the stars. Focus on the light. The photons emitted by our Sun, having travelled 8 minutes across the void, strike the shroud of 3I Atlas and the metallic grains of its hull. This light does not merely bounce, it interacts with the very atoms of the interloper, some wavelengths being absorbed while others are scattered. When that reflected light finally reaches the high-resolution spectrometers of our terrestrial and orbital telescopes, it is no longer just light. It has been transformed into a decoded message, a spectral barcode that reveals the intimate architecture of the star system that birthed this traveller. The most startling line in this message concerns the element oxygen. Oxygen is the third most abundant element in the universe, a cornerstone of planetary geology and the very breath of life as we know it. In our own solar system, from the sun-baked rocks of Mercury to the frozen plains of Pluto, the ratio of different isotopes of oxygen remains remarkably consistent. We are accustomed to a specific balance between oxygen-16, the most common variety, and its heavier cousin, oxygen-18, which carries 2 extra neutrons in its nucleus. This ratio is the chemical signature of our home, a standard against which all local matter is measured, a family resemblance shared by every moon, asteroid and planet orbiting our star. Yet, as the data from 3I Atlas was processed, a profound discrepancy emerged. The ratio of oxygen-18 within the traveller's metallic matrix deviates by 40% from the solar system standard. This is not a minor statistical fluctuation or a negligible margin of error. In the precise world of isotope geochemistry, where differences are often measured in parts per thousand, a 40% deviation is a tectonic shift. It is the physical proof that the fundamental building blocks of planets are assembled with different proportions in other sectors of the galaxy. This is the ink of the cosmic letter, written in a chemical dialect that we have never before seen in the flesh. To find a 40% deviation is to realize that the recipe for a solar system is not a universal constant. It suggests that the environment where 3I Atlas was born was enriched by a different lineage of stars than our own. Our oxygen was forged in the hearts of massive stars and distributed by their explosive deaths, but the proportions were dictated by the specific timing and proximity of those events. The birthplace of 3I Atlas must have been influenced by a different sequence of nucleosynthesis, perhaps a higher frequency of massive, rapidly burning stars, or a different proximity to the galactic center where the heavy elements are more densely packed and the stellar cycles move at a more frantic pace. This revelation transforms 3I Atlas from a mere curiosity into a piece of alien chemistry held in the hand of human science. It tells us that, if we were to stand on a planet in that distant system, the very air and water would be isotopically distinct. The rocks would feel the same, the water would taste the same, but at the level of the atom the world would be fundamentally other. This isotopic fingerprint is the ultimate evidence of the object's interstellar pedigree. It is a piece of the galaxy that has refused to conform to our local laws of composition, a fragment of a reality that exists outside our own. The 40% deviation is a window into the deep history of the Milky Way. It reveals a galaxy that is a mosaic of chemical provinces, each with its own unique history of starbirth and stellar death. We often think of the galaxy as a well-mixed soup, but 3I Atlas proves that it is more like a collection of distinct islands, each with its own unique soil and its own specific elemental heritage. The ink of this letter tells a story of a star system, where the conditions of creation were subtly, yet fundamentally different from our own. It is a humbling realization. We are not the cosmic standard. We are merely one variation on a theme that is being played out in a billion different ways across the expanse of space. As scientists pored over the spectroscopic data, the weight of this discovery began to settle. We have spent centuries studying the matter of our own system, believing we were learning the universal laws of chemistry. But 3I Atlas has shown us that we have only been reading one book in a vast and diverse library. The isotopic fingerprints of this traveller are a reminder that the universe is under no obligation to be uniform. The deviation of 40% is a silent metallic shout from the dark, a testimony to the fact that out there, among the distant suns, the very stuff of existence is being brewed in vats we can scarcely conceive. The letter has been read, and its message is clear. We are inhabitants of a very specific, very local corner of a much stranger and more varied cosmos. This visitor, by its very composition, has stripped away our chemical parochialism, leaving us to contemplate a universe where the ingredients of life and land are as diverse as the stars themselves. At the distance of 0.2 astronomical units, 3I Atlas made its most intimate pass by the Earth. This gap of roughly 30 million kilometers is a vast and silent wilderness, an expanse that would take a modern spacecraft months to traverse. Yet in the architecture of the inner solar system, it is a mere whisper of a distance. At this range, the traveller did not appear as a looming presence in our sky. It remained a point of light, invisible to the naked eye, a ghost ship sailing through the suburbs of our world. However, the lack of visual spectacle did not mean the encounter was without physical consequence. As 3I Atlas tore through the local space, it exerted a subtle, invisible influence on the environment, leaving a permanent mark on the delicate orbital clockwork of our neighbourhood. Gravity is the longest-reaching hand in the cosmos, a force that requires no medium and no contact to make its presence felt. As the interloper moved with its immense hyperbolic momentum, it carried with it a gravitational field that acted as a microscopic comb, raking through the field of near-Earth objects that inhabit the space around our planet. These objects, the fragments of ancient collisions, the stray rocks of the inner belt, and the microscopic dust of passing comets, exist in a state of precarious balance, their orbits dictated by the massive pull of the Sun and the smaller periodic tugs of the planets. When 3I Atlas entered this domain, it introduced a new, foreign vector into the local equation. The interaction was silent and profound. As the traveller swept past, its mass tugged at the stones and debris in its path. This was not the violent, world-shattering pull of a wandering planet, but a series of micro-perturbations, subtle shifts in velocity that were measured in millimeters per second. Yet, in the frictionless vacuum of space, even the smallest change is indelible. 3I Atlas acted as a gravitational rake, slightly altering the trajectories of hundreds of small bodies. It pulled some into tighter orbits around the Sun, and nudged others into wider, more eccentric paths. Like a silver needle passing through a complex tapestry, it did not tear the fabric, but it rearranged the threads, leaving a wake of shifted destinies behind it. The significance of these perturbations lies in the precision of our modern astronomical surveys. We track near-Earth objects with a clinical obsession, calculating their paths decades and centuries into the future to ensure the safety of our world. When 3I Atlas passed through the neighbourhood, the orbital elements of these local rocks had to be updated. The visitor had effectively rewritten the history of our debris field. A rock that might have passed 1 million kilometres from Earth a century from now might now pass a few thousand kilometres closer or further away because of the momentary presence of this interstellar stranger. The traveller was a chaotic element, a brief injection of foreign energy that reminded us that our solar system is not a closed static system, but a dynamic environment subject to the whims of the wider galaxy. This combing of the local space is a physical record of the encounter. Long after 3I Atlas has faded into the blackness of the outer reaches, its passage will be detectable in the mathematical signatures of the rocks it touched. It created a ripple in the gravitational pond of our system, a wave that will continue to propagate as these perturbed objects interact with other bodies in the eons to come. We often think of space as an empty void, where things pass without consequence, but the reality is a dense web of interconnected influences. 3I Atlas did not just pass through our space, it interacted with it, leaving a trail of altered motion that serves as a testament to its passage. The interaction also highlighted the sheer density of the cosmic debris that shares our home. The space around Earth is not a vacuum in the absolute sense. It is a crowded corridor of remnants from the dawn of the solar system. By observing the way 3I Atlas perturbed these objects, scientists were able to gain a better understanding of the mass and density of the interloper itself. The comb worked both ways. By looking at how the local rocks moved, we could weigh the traveller. We found a body that was remarkably dense, a solid core of metal and rock that refused to yield to the stresses of its high-speed transit. The encounter at 0.2 astronomical units was a moment of profound invisible intimacy. For a few days, the Earth and this messenger from a distant supernova were neighbours, bound together by the same fundamental laws of attraction that govern the entire universe. It was a reminder that we are not isolated from the rest of the cosmos. The same gravity that keeps our feet on the ground and our moon in the sky is the force that allowed a 4-billion-year-old shard of a dead star to reach out and touch the rocks of our own backyard. As the object began to pull away, its influence weakened, the gravitational thread stretching and eventually snapping as the distance grew. But the comb had already done its work. The local debris had been rearranged, the paths had been shifted, and the solar system was no longer the same place it had been before the visitor arrived. 3I Atlas was moving back into the dark, but it left behind a neighbourhood that bore the subtle, permanent scar of its passage, a wake of shifted trajectories that will endure as long as the sun continues to shine. The Earth, in its grand and ancient stability, serves as the primary residence for all we have ever known. It is a house of stone and water, anchored to a star that provides the steady warmth of a hearth. To us, its dimensions are vast, its history is long, and its security is absolute. Yet when placed against the backdrop of the interstellar medium, this house becomes a tiny, isolated structure in a dark and infinite forest. In this scale of existence, the arrival of 3I Atlas is not the visitation of a fellow traveller, but the impact of a pebble thrown by a galactic giant. The object did not announce its arrival, nor did it seek permission to enter. It simply tore through the front window of our local space, a projectile of pure kinetic energy that entered and exited our awareness in a fraction of a heartbeat. To perceive the speed of this transit is to acknowledge a scale of motion that renders our terrestrial experiences irrelevant. A bullet fired from a rifle travels at less than 1 kilometer per second, a speed that we consider the pinnacle of lethal velocity. 3I Atlas moved at 15 kilometers per second relative to the Sun, a pace that was further accelerated by the Sun's own gravitational pull as the object reached its point of closest approach. This is a velocity that shears through the vacuum, a momentum so absolute that the object does not so much travel through space as it punctures it. If the solar system is a vast silent cathedral of light and gravity, 3I Atlas was a silver slug fired through its nave, passing from the entrance to the altar and out through the far wall before the echoes of its arrival could even begin to ring. The fleeting nature of this encounter is its most defining characteristic. We are accustomed to the celestial bodies that linger. The moon has circled the Earth for billions of years. The planets follow their weary, repetitive tracks with the reliability of a clock. Even the comets that visit us from the frozen outskirts of the Oort cloud are bound by the sun, destined to return after their long, cold winters. But 3I Atlas refused to linger. It did not enter an orbit. It did not settle into a stable relationship with any local body. It possessed too much energy to be captured, too much purpose to be distracted. It treated the entire solar system as a mere waypoint, a small patch of illuminated space that it happened to cross on its way to somewhere else. There is a chilling indifference in this lack of acknowledgement. The object did not slow down to be studied. It did not emit a signal or change its course in response to the gravitational presence of the planets it passed. It followed the rigid, unyielding laws of motion with a clinical detachment. To the traveller, the Earth was not a home or a cradle of life. It was merely a gravitational bump in the road, a minor mass that exerted a negligible tug on its metallic hull. The pebble did not care about the house it passed through. It did not notice the intricate lives unfolding within the walls, or the telescopes pointed desperately toward its receding form. It was a bullet of matter, a shard of a dead star system, moving with a momentum that was established 4 billion years ago and will not be exhausted for billions more. The transit through the inner solar system was a momentary flicker in the long history of the object. It spent eons in the absolute darkness of the interstellar void, where time is measured in the slow decay of radioactive isotopes and the occasional collision with a stray photon. Its time in the light of our sun was a vanishingly small fraction of its existence, a brief moment of warmth before returning to the eternal winter of the deep. For us, the detection of 3I Atlas was a monumental event, a breakthrough in our understanding of the galaxy. For the object, it was nothing. It was a few days of solar radiation, a slight bend in its trajectory, and then a return to the silence. This disparity in perspective is the central theme of the encounter. We inhabit a world of slow, rhythmic cycles, where the passage of time is marked by the seasons and the steady dance of the stars. 3I Atlas belongs to a different regime of time and speed. It is a creature of the linear, not the cyclic. It moves in a straight line through a universe that we perceive as a series of circles. It is the reminder that the solar system is not a closed room, but a hallway. The house we call home is situated on a busy galactic thoroughfare, and 3I Atlas is the proof that the traffic is moving at speeds we can scarcely comprehend. As the object exited the back window of our system, heading toward the distant stars of the northern hemisphere, it left us standing in the draft. The window is broken, the silence has been interrupted, and we are left to contemplate the sheer scale of the energy that just passed us by. The pebble is gone, already reclaiming the anonymity of the dark, but the realization of its speed remains. It was a bullet of pure kinetic energy traversing a cathedral of space, and its departure is as absolute as its arrival was unexpected. We are left with the data, the spectral lines, and the memory of a ghost that did not have the time or the inclination to stay. The house is quiet once more, but we now know that the walls are not as thick as we once believed, and the giant who threw the pebble is still out there, somewhere in the dark, moving the pieces of the galaxy with a strength that makes our world seem very small indeed. The departure of 3i Atlas into the receding shadows of the outer solar system is a masterclass in cosmic apathy. We, as a species, are conditioned to seek meaning in the movements of the heavens. We have spent millennia projecting our myths, our fears and our aspirations onto the stars, naming the constellations after our heroes and weaving the motions of the planets into the fabric of our destinies. We want the universe to notice us. We want the arrival of an interstellar visitor to be a herald of some greater truth, a signal from a distant intelligence, or at the very least, a pause in the eternal silence. But 3i Atlas offers no such comfort. It is a piece of cold, unthinking clockwork, a fragment of matter that follows the rigid mathematical laws of motion with a devastating lack of intent. It did not slow down to be studied. It did not adjust its trajectory to avoid our world or to approach it more closely. It did not emit a radio pulse, a flash of light, or any sign of recognition that it was passing through a system inhabited by a sentient species. The object's behaviour is defined by its total lack of purpose. It is not a scout, not a messenger, and not a monument. It is simply a rock, forged in fire and cast into the ice, moving because nothing has yet possessed the strength to stop it. This absence of agency is more profound than any alien signal could ever be. It reveals the universe not as a theatre designed for our benefit, but as a vast, drafty hallway where the lights are mostly out and the doors lead to nowhere. In this hallway, human concerns are silenced by the sheer scale of the cosmic engine. The rise and fall of our empires, the intricate details of our philosophies, and the sum total of our collective suffering are less than a whisper against the roar of the interstellar vacuum. 3i Atlas passed within 30 million kilometres of our home, yet it remained as indifferent to our existence as a mountain is to the insects that crawl upon its slopes. It is a reminder that the laws of physics are not a conversation. They are a set of constraints that operate without regard for the entities they govern. The gravity that pulled on the object and the radiation that scorched its metallic hull are the same forces that keep our hearts beating and our atmosphere in place, but they are blind forces, devoid of empathy or interest. The universe does not care for our gods or our civilizations. To the great machinery of the galaxy, the Earth is a minor chemical anomaly, a damp speck of dust orbiting a common yellow star. 3i Atlas is a representative of that larger reality. It brings with it the chill of the interstellar deep, a coldness that is not just a lack of heat, but a lack of significance. When we look at the trajectory of this traveller, we are looking at the ultimate expression of the cosmic engine, a system that produces complexity and beauty, not because it wants to, but because it must, following the inevitable path from high energy to low, from order to entropy. The object's lack of purpose is its most striking feature because it forces us to confront our own isolation. We are the ones who provide the narrative. We are the ones who give the object a name and a history, who calculate its speed and analyse its isotopes. Without our observation, 3i Atlas would have passed through the solar system as a nameless, invisible ghost, its journey through our neighbourhood as meaningless as its 4-billion-year transit through the void. The indifference of the object is a mirror held up to our own need for meaning. It shows us a universe that is vast, ancient, and utterly uncaring, a place where the stars do not shine for us, but because of the nuclear reactions in their cores. This realization is not a tragedy, but a liberation. To inhabit a universe of profound indifference means that we are the sole authors of our own purpose. The drafty hallway of the cosmos may be cold, and the scale of the engine may be overwhelming, but within our small, illuminated room, we have created something that the rest of the galaxy lacks: a voice. 3i Atlas is the silent traveller, but we are the storytellers. It follows the clockwork, but we are the ones who hear the ticking. As the object recedes, reclaiming its place in the infinite dark, it leaves us with the chilling but beautiful truth that we are alone in our ability to care. The universe provides the matter and the motion, but we provide the meaning. The object's indifference is the canvas upon which we paint our understanding, a reminder that to be a sentient inhabitant of this expanse is to be the only thing that notices the silence. The clockwork continues. The planets will keep their orbits, the sun will continue its slow burn, and 3i Atlas will eventually cross the threshold of the heliosphere, returning to the interstellar sea. It will carry no memory of us, no record of our telescopes or our wonder. It will move into the future with the same blind momentum that carried it through the past, a bullet of metal and rock traversing a cathedral of space that has no architect and no congregation. We are left on the shore watching the wake of a vessel that was never a ship, holding on to the realization that in a universe this large and this indifferent, the fact that we exist to witness it at all is the only miracle we will ever need. Against the backdrop of this cosmic apathy, the human mind emerges as a defiant anomaly, a localized rebellion against the reign of silence. While 3i Atlas remains a blind and senseless traveller, the species that observed its transit has performed an act of intellectual alchemy. We have taken the faint reflected photons of a nameless star and the subtle gravitational perturbations of a tumbling rock, and transformed them into a coherent narrative of stellar evolution. This is the unique prerogative of the observer, to take the raw, chaotic data of the universe and weave it into the fabric of meaning. In this corner of the galaxy, we are the only entities capable of translating the chemical signature left by this stranger, turning a meaningless shard of metal into a profound testimony of the deep past. The process of translation begins not with a greeting, but with the cold, precise capture of light. As the visitor moved through the inner solar system, our instruments acted as a net, catching the specific wavelengths of light that interacted with its surface. In laboratories and observatories across the planet, this light was dissected, spread out into a spectrum that revealed the presence of nickel, iron, and the anomalous ratios of oxygen isotopes. To an unthinking universe, these are merely arrangements of matter and energy, following the path of the least resistance. To the human mind, however, they are the ink of a cosmic letter. We do not merely see the light, we read it. We recognize that a 40% deviation in oxygen-18 is not just a number, but a declaration of independence from our local chemical history. By deciphering this letter, we have given the silence a voice. The object itself has no story to tell. It has no memory of the supernova that forged it, or the 4 billion years it spent in the dark. It is we who provide the memory. We are the ones who look at the shroud of ionized metal and see the radioactive heart of a white dwarf star detonating in a Type 1a supernova. We are the ones who look at the hyperbolic trajectory and see the kinetic energy of a planetary system being torn asunder. The intellectual triumph of this encounter lies in our ability to intercept a message that was never intended for us, a letter addressed to no one, tossed into a post office of vacuum and gravity, and find within it the detailed history of a star that vanished before our world was born. This act of translation is a bridge between the chaos of the stars and the order of the mind. The universe produces complexity through the blind application of physical laws, but it is the human observer who recognizes that complexity as a story. We have turned 3i Atlas into a mirror, one that reflects not just the light of our sun, but the reach of our own understanding. By calculating the mass, the velocity, and the composition of this interloper, we have extended our consciousness across the light years. We have effectively travelled back through time, standing on the edge of a distant, violent nursery where the heavy elements were forged in the fires of a stellar cataclysm. There is a profound beauty in this lopsided relationship. The traveller remains indifferent, yet we are moved. The object is small, yet the insights we gain from it are vast. We have taken a piece of industrial shrapnel and used it to map the chemical provinces of the Milky Way, proving that the recipe for planets is as varied as the stars themselves. This is the essence of the scientific endeavour, to find the universal in the particular, to see the history of a galaxy in a single tumbling rock. We are the grateful recipients of a gift that the giver did not even know it was offering. In doing so, we have fulfilled a role that the universe cannot perform for itself. Matter cannot understand matter. Gravity cannot contemplate the curvature of space. It requires the presence of a sentient observer to turn the mechanical ticking of the cosmic clock into a sense of time. 3i Atlas, in its mute and metallic passage, has provided us with the raw materials for a new chapter in our understanding of the cosmos. We have taken its silence and turned it into a symphony of isotopes and orbits. We have taken its purposeless flight and given it the purpose of education. The triumph is not just in the detection, but in the synthesis. We have combined the physics of the hyperbola with the chemistry of the supernova to create a portrait of a world we will never see. This is the true power of the human spirit, to reach into the dark and pull out a handful of truth. As 3I Atlas recedes, becoming once again a nameless point of light in the interstellar sea, it leaves behind a legacy of knowledge that it never possessed. We have read the letter, we have understood the message, and in doing so, we have proven that even in an indifferent universe, the act of observation is a sacred task. We are the ones who turn the void into a library, ensuring that the journey of this lonely traveller was not in vain, but was instead a vital contribution to the story of everything. The bridge between the entropic chaos of the stars and the structured order of the human mind is a fragile but enduring construction. Out in the cold expanses of the galaxy, matter obeys the laws of physics without awareness or intent. A star explodes, a planet is torn apart, and a shard of metal is hurled into the void. These are events of raw power, devoid of meaning until they are intercepted by a consciousness capable of asking why. 3I Atlas, in its 4 billion-year flight, was merely a consequence of gravity and momentum. It was a fragment of a dead world moving through a graveyard of light. Yet, the moment its reflected light was captured by the sensors of our world, the nature of its journey was fundamentally altered. Through the act of perception, we have bestowed upon this traveller a purpose it could never have possessed on its own. It has been transformed from a piece of stray shrapnel into a vital witness, a messenger that has finally found an audience. The data gathered during this brief high-speed transit is the foundation of a new kind of cartography. We may never possess the technology to cross the light years and visit the star system that birthed this visitor, yet through the lens of our telescopes we have already begun to walk its surface. By analysing the 40% deviation in oxygen-18 and the specific concentrations of nickel and iron, we are mapping the chemistry of a world that no longer exists. We are learning that the ingredients of life and the building blocks of planets are not a single, universal recipe, but a diverse and vibrant collection of possibilities. This traveller has allowed us to peer into a different corner of the galactic kitchen, showing us how the heavy elements are seasoned by the proximity of a supernova. We are building a library of the unseen, using the ink of 3I Atlas to describe the landscapes of alien solar systems that remain forever out of our physical reach. This is the great paradox of our existence. We are physically small, inhabiting a tiny island of warmth in an uncaring and infinite expanse. Our lives are measured in decades, while the journey of this traveller is measured in billions of years. Yet, our consciousness is the very mechanism through which the universe begins to understand itself. We are the sensory organs of the cosmos, the eyes that see the light, and the minds that comprehend the laws that govern it. Without the observer, the universe is a vast dark room where nothing is known and nothing is felt. With us, it becomes a place of discovery and wonder. The mind acts as a lens, focusing the diffuse and chaotic energy of the stars into a sharp, clear image of reality. We take the letter written in isotopes and atoms and we read it aloud, giving the silent history of the galaxy a voice that can be heard across the ages. The presence of 3I Atlas in our system was a fleeting encounter, a momentary intersection of two very different histories. But the impact of that encounter will endure as long as our species continues to look toward the stars. The data we have extracted from its metallic hull is a permanent addition to the sum of human knowledge, a bridge that connects our local neighbourhood to the farthest reaches of the Milky Way. It reminds us that we are part of a larger, more complex story, one that began long before the first atoms of our sun coalesced and will continue long after our world has returned to the dust. Our ability to perceive the letter is not just a scientific achievement. It is a profound expression of our place in the cosmic order. We are the bridge builders, the translators, the ones who find order in the chaos and meaning in the void. As we watch the traveller recede, its hyperbolic path carrying it back into the dark currents between the stars, we do not feel a sense of loss. Instead, we feel a sense of completion. The journey of 3I Atlas has found its destination in the human mind. It has fulfilled its role as a cosmic messenger, and we have fulfilled our role as the recipients of its message. The universe is no longer just a collection of cold, indifferent objects. It is a story that we are actively reading. Though we remain small, and our island of warmth is fragile, the reach of our understanding is limited only by the boundaries of the universe itself. We are the bridge between the stars and the mind, the place where the silence of the galaxy is finally broken by the sound of a question. Through our consciousness, the traveller has been given a legacy, and the universe has been given a mirror in which to see its own reflection. The traveller now turns its face toward the eternal dark, its brief and luminous transit of our solar system coming to an inevitable end. As 3i Atlas crosses the invisible boundaries of the outer planetary orbits, the warmth of our sun begins to fail, its radiation no longer sufficient to maintain the glowing shroud of ionized nickel and iron that define the object's stay. The metallic vapours that once trailed behind it like a spectral banner are cooling, condensing back onto the scorched hull or dispersing into the vacuum as lonely, isolated atoms. The object is reclaiming its identity as a cold, dark shard of a dead world, a silent projectile returning to the absolute zero of the interstellar medium. It moves with a relentless, unyielding momentum, carving a path through the solar suburbs toward the stars of the constellation Pegasus. The departure is as swift as the arrival. At 15 kilometers per second, the distance between the Earth and the visitor grows by more than 1 million kilometers every single day. The telescopes that once tracked its every tumble and flare now find it increasingly difficult to distinguish the interloper from the background noise of the deep sky. It is fading, shrinking from a significant revelation into a mere coordinate, and eventually it will become nothing more than a memory stored in the silicon brains of our observatories. Yet, while the physical object departs, it leaves behind a lingering secret that has forever altered our understanding of the galactic landscape. We are left with the data, a chemical and isotopic record that serves as a permanent challenge to our previous assumptions about the uniformity of the universe. The secret carried by 3i Atlas is the realization of our own chemical eccentricity. By revealing an oxygen-18 ratio that deviates by 40% from our own, the traveller has proven that the solar system is not a universal template. We now know that the galaxy is a mosaic of distinct chemical provinces, each with its own history of stellar birth and thermonuclear destruction. This visitor has provided the first direct evidence that the building blocks of planets in other sectors of the galaxy are fundamentally different from those we find in our own backyard. It has stripped away the comfort of the familiar, leaving us to contemplate a universe where the very ground beneath an alien sky might be composed of elements in proportions we have never seen. This is the new understanding of our place in the galaxy. We are residents of a specific local variation, one chapter in a vast and diverse library of worlds. As the object enters the constellation of Pegasus, it begins a journey that will last for eons before it encounters the gravitational influence of another star. It will drift through the voids where the light of the Milky Way is a faint, distant glow, a lone messenger carrying the signature of a 4-billion-year-old cataclysm. It will witness the slow rotation of the galactic arms and the birth of new nebulae, remaining indifferent to the passage of time. The silence that it brought with it from the deep has returned, but it is no longer the same silence. It is a silence that has been interrogated, a void that has been forced to yield a portion of its history to the persistent inquiry of the human mind. The encounter with 3i Atlas was a moment of profound cosmic intersection, a brief alignment between a mindless traveller and a sentient observer. We have taken the raw mechanical motion of a rock and turned it into a story of stellar evolution and galactic chemistry. We have proven that even in a universe defined by profound indifference, the act of observation creates a legacy. The traveller is gone, but the story remains, a testament to our ability to reach into the dark and find the light of knowledge. We are the ones who give the silence a voice, the ones who translate the silent stories written in the stars, ensuring that no journey through the void is ever truly lost. The stars of Pegasus now hold the traveller in their distant embrace, the object becoming a ghost once more. We turn our gaze back to our own world, enriched by the realization that we are part of a much larger, much stranger reality. The window that was briefly opened by 3i Atlas remains ajar, offering a view into the infinite variety of the cosmos. We continue our watch, waiting for the next letter to arrive from the deep, ready to decode whatever secrets the next interloper might carry. The universe continues its silent work, and we continue our quest to understand it, one photon and one isotope at a time. If you found this exploration of the interstellar unknown compelling, subscribe to our channel. To support our mission of uncovering the secrets of the cosmos, consider joining our community on Patreon. Your support allows us to continue translating the silent stories written in the stars,